Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today's guest, actually, you probably may have remembered her. She's done some of the guest hosting. She interviewed me, actually. We just remembered not too long ago, and she's a recent graduate from the paralegal program at Trials College, passed her P1 licensing exam, and if school wasn't enough there for her, she now is studying overseas in the UK in law school there in Sussex there at the in Brighton. So thank you so much, Roxanna, here for joining us, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what brought you into law and where you've been over the last couple of years.
Sure. Thank you so much, JP, for having me. And hello, everyone who's joined us today. So little short intro on myself, how I got into law. So I'll start with after graduating high school, was thinking of what I wanted to study, and I've actually had quite an experience with depression and mental health. So I wanted to study psychology. I have a passion for helping others, and I wanted to use my own experience and struggles and create that into something that I could pass on, not the mental health struggles, but of course, overcoming that and coping with it and helping others. So I went to York for the psychology program, and my second year, I was also having a hard time with my depression and not doing so great at statistics. I'm not good at math. So I've actually dropped out. During that time, I was working a bit retail until I was able to land a job at a personal injury firm. I've worked there for just under 2 years, and during that time, I realized how law, just like psychology, is a way for lawyers to help others in society for personal injury, specifically people who need compensation and have been harmed. So it matched my interests. And after that, I decided, well, not me, I'll give all the credit to my mother. She urged me to get back into school and study and make a better future for myself. So at that time, she actually was doing some research on the LLB program, but I still haven't overcome failing. And I had that fear of setting a long-term goal for myself. So I decided to go to Trios because it is a short-term program compared to universities. And when I was enrolling, I was deciding between the social working program and the paralegal program. And I was looking at the courses that both of them had, and I thought I might as well put the experience that I had for the last 2 years and put that into some use. So I took the paralegal program. I was at the Toronto campus, and COVID happened. I think it was the second month in, and of course, COVID impacted us all in a bad way, but it was a blessing in disguise because there was the Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. And that was a way of me getting my foot in the door of the legal field, getting in touch with a lot of legal professionals, inviting them as guests, and of course, attending the series and meeting a lot of people and networking. And that just grew my passion even stronger. So I decided after I graduate, I'm going to get my paralegal license, and then I'm going to have a long-term goal and go to the LLB program. So yeah, I passed trials, passed the paralegal license, and here I am in Brighton, England.
All right, so we'll work our way back then to Brighton at the end because people want to know what the first few weeks of law school has been like. But I guess going back to the start there to get into starting the program, as I mentioned to you, that I have students who are in week 2 or 3, I think, if they have to take student success strategies. So very at the beginning of the program, like you were a year and a half ago. And when you made that decision to take the paralegal program, what was that initial? I think the first month, as you mentioned, was in person. the only month that was in person. But what was it like in terms of getting started? What did you find that you struggled with initially, and something you can share with students who are probably going through that same kind of period right now, where they're trying to get acclimatized to school or returning back to school? I think for you it was a couple of years from the time you were taking statistics there. What did you find differently, and what kind of helped you get through that initial period?
Well, if I recall, students' success strategies didn't have a textbook. And of course, when you start school, you want to start your readings, have a textbook. So I know everyone was mutually unhappy about that, but knowing that that's just the beginning course, it's the intro, you're going to get into the law stuff, you're going to get the textbooks later on, and doing your best at that. So making connections, making friends with people in my class, which was my only time to make the personal connection, because after that it was online. Um, but yeah, just trying my best. And I know it's not exactly law related, but that's how you start looking at ways of, let's say, for critical thinking, and critical analysis. Those are the skills that you will need to have when you start the legal courses. So, and they're also quite easier courses compared to the law courses. So using that as a time to bump my average up. And from the very beginning, I had the goal that I wanted to graduate with a distinction and I need to get good grades. So in order to do that, if it's not a textbook you're reading whatever materials, there's a lot of articles and projects, working with your classmates and being involved with that.
So I hope you ended up accomplishing that goal in the end there, and those.
Yes, I
That's
did.
good to know. I was like, oh, I should have mentioned it. Hopefully, it's in a live interview. Just got to go with the punches there. But with that, then I mean, let's look at the program in of itself. I think I have students who are writing their first law midterm, and it's still kind of again the intro to legal class, so it's not as comprehensive as what they're going to come into in the next month and two. But what did you find with doing multiple choice open book exams? Was that something you had done ever before, and what did you find worked for you? What did you find maybe didn't work for you when you first approached it?
Well, it's not, I mean, in university, it was multiple choice, but it's a Scantron and it's not open book. And the questions are quite lengthy. So what helped me is with the slides and the PowerPoint slides, I would always make notes, and I was very meticulous about my notes, had them information dense. And also, I know JP does Kahoots. I would always type those out as well, because that was a good practice at multiple choice questions. And they're actually quite similar to the kinds of questions. Well, it's not exactly the same kinds of things, but the format of it, the way you approach it and think of it and break it down. And also, when you're choosing your answer, process of elimination and knowing which answers you could quickly cross out. All of that helped me, and summarizing my notes. I know not everybody takes notes. Some people take handwritten notes. I'm personally a computer notes person. So in the end, that helped a lot, because once you accumulate all of that and towards the end of the course, you have all of your materials in one Word document, and that really helps with the open book. I'd also use highlighting schemes. So when it's like a 20-word document, I know where to find certain subjects, and that really helped with my open book exams.
Now, were you? I'm not sure, because at some point we brought in. I think part of it was with the pandemic there, going to more digital books versus sort of the hard copy books. But were you pulling out the highlighter, whether virtually or in a physical book, and how were you highlighting? You mentioned sort of these schemes there. Um, how much of it was important with keeping up with the readings and doing things like highlighting and taking notes?
Um, well, I actually always opted for a physical book. I feel like it helps me better. But I don't think that is actually an option now. I'm not sure. but I would highlight the titles of, there's usually numbered lists when they're introducing a topic, and I would highlight the titles and the bulletin points, and also tabbing pages. So when you're reading, obviously it's not very effective to highlight everything on a page, but tabbing out the most important topics and knowing where to find them. And also with my highlighting scheme, I kind of like color coordinated. So for example, if it's a definition, it would be one color. If it's a numbered list, it would be another color. If it's a legal term, it'd be another color. And I've kept that color scheme up until my paralegal exam. So at this point, like, it's ingrained in my head. So yellow means definition for me. And it's still something I use now in law school. So having some sort of habits that you stick with and consistency helps. Everybody's different. So maybe for some people, highlighting doesn't help, but having a habit that you work on and stick throughout the whole program will definitely help, because you could use those same habits when you're doing the exam, the paralegal exam.
Yeah, we'll get to the paralegal exam in a bit because it's a little bit different, obviously, because you have the 900 pages of
Yeah.
materials versus all of these textbooks. Did you find as well? I mean, the other part there is you have these assignments, two courses at a time, right? Did you find in terms of writing? Now I know you would have like legal research and writing, legal communications kind of near the beginning, but how did you find switching from maybe any writing experience you may have had in high school or undergraduate to legal writing? Was there something different about it, and what worked for you in terms of improving your both your written advocacy, but just assignment writing and getting the marks, obviously, to graduate with distinction?
Well, writing like a case brief is definitely not the same as an essay. But in terms of the format, I'm not sure if everybody's learned this yet. There's IRAC, and the textbooks do a really good job of laying that out. Also, JP, I'm pretty sure you taught me legal writing. You did a good job as well. Using those kind of resources and templates, I've always referred to those when I'm writing my assignments. And for me, it was more about practice. Of course, the first few times it's much more difficult because you're not used to it. But once you learn what IRAC, issue, rule, application, conclusion, what it means, the ratio decidendi of a case, how to like identify those when you're reading a case, it becomes more of a habit. Another thing that really helped is actually reading cases. They're very long and it takes a lot of time to get through it, but it's all for your benefit. And it's sort of like a skill. You're not always reading every single word page by page. Eventually you learn how to skim through it and just read the relevant parts, but that's a very important skill in this field, because law is based on a lot of paper and a lot of reading. And once you kind of accomplish that and hone that skill in, it becomes much easier, especially with your writing.
And another type of assignment or project that you would have had to do quite a few times were the sort of hands-on, whether they were the today actually I had students do the mediations in ADR, but and they're going to go into trial advocacy, and then so I think I remember your group's immigration hearing in particular because it was probably the last thing there. But what would you share in terms of getting used to doing things with respect to, and we can sort of segue as well as into doing things online in terms of advocacy, but how did you find, I mean, did you have this dream ever at some point of being, like the litigator that's, on Suits or something like that, where you're in court? How did you find that experience, especially doing it online?
I'll be honest, it's still something I struggle to this day of public speaking. And I remember in mock trials, I'd always have to like kind of push out my objections. I'm very like meek and shy. But it's something again that comes with practice. I was talking to JP shortly before this began, and we were recalling all of the guest speaker series that I was a part of, and I actually spoke. And that's another thing that helped me, just taking every opportunity you can to be involved in speaking with others, whether it is joining as a guest speaker series, practicing with mock trials and doing runs with your friends, like mock trial runs with your friends or with your group. Also, just talking to yourself. A lot of the times, some people say talk in the mirror, but I would actually just turn on Zoom and be in a meeting with myself. And because it was online, that's what everybody else is seeing. So you want to be able to know what that looks like when you're speaking. Because a lot of people think, okay, just because it's online, I could be reading off my script and no one's going to be able to tell, but you actually could. The way your eyes move, you could definitely call it out. That's actually happened in Zoom court as well. So just getting used to it and experiencing and practicing it really helped.
And of course, then generally, outside of that first, I think maybe 4-6 weeks at the most, 4 to 6 weeks at the beginning, the rest of the program was done entirely on Microsoft Teams and we used a little bit of Zoom, but online and remote. And what did you find in terms of making that adjustment? I think you're the only class that had to make that change very quickly from what you were doing before. And what did you find worked for you in terms of studying remotely? Did you find anything that you struggled with in particular with classes not having to come down to the campus at Bloor and Sherburne? Especially, I think you had morning classes, right? So how was that like?
Well, at first I didn't like it, of course, because I liked the in-class experience. But as I accepted that COVID is not going away anytime soon, I try to look at the benefits of it. Of course, you save on that travel time. You get to sleep in a bit more. And I actually was able to schedule in more studying with that saving of time. Before class and also after class, I'm still in the same spot, still in my room. And I would fit in a lot of more studying and I was a lot more productive. And in terms of getting used to online, I feel like with my assignments and group work especially, it really helped with being on Teams. For mock trials, I would just make a group with everybody that's in my group, and we'd have a platform where we could do video calls and chat with each other. And it was just more, I don't know what the word is. It was much more easier to have everything at the fingertips of your laptop. And it kind of helps with, it's harder for people to not show up when class is online. So it helps better with your class engagement and working with your groups. So I actually, at the end, I actually preferred online learning. It took some getting used to, but like once you learn the amount of more resources that you have because you are online, there's a lot more advantages than disadvantages. So you just gotta think positively.
And on that, I mean, in terms of getting consistency in terms of a routine, right? Which is, when you'd wake up in the morning, you get ready, go on the TTC or however you would get to campus. What did you find about sort of making that adjustment to change, again, get some kind of structure for whether it's studying, whether it's reviewing, whether it's writing an exam? How did you kind of manage that?
Well, I actually really liked joining the Justice in Pieces series. It was at 5 every day, and I was in morning classes. So I think that ended around 12 or 1. I honestly don't remember. But after that, I would have a few hours to have some lunch, study a bit, and then 5 guest speaker series. And then after that, go back to studying. So that actually helped structure my routine a lot better. Whereas before that, it felt like I had the whole rest of the day because I wasn't working until like October last year. So I had a lot of time at home, and you kind of get lazy. At the beginning of COVID, I was quite lazy. So I didn't have much of a routine, but once I made myself a routine and I actually stuck to it, I was actually looking forward to the guest speaker series every day. And that helped me give motivation, hearing other legal professionals, and not just legal professionals, other people that had other avenues in their life and speaking about their experience. It gave me a lot of inspiration. So COVID was a tough time, so I feel like everybody needs a little bit of inspiration, and we're all sitting at home alone, and after quite some time, it gets lonely, but knowing that life continues and your learning continues and people are still working online, it helps keep me going. Kind of got off topic there because I was talking about routine, but
Well, I mean, so you brought up, I mean, I think I think you probably were there probably for the very first speaker. I would think it would have been in one of our classes. And again, I think initially it was every day because I thought it was gonna be like a 1 week thing, 2 week thing, and then we just kept doing it. And then you and Rochelle and Kevin and Adam and some others there joined in and helped bring in speakers. But maybe you could talk about, I believe you brought in somebody and then it kind of paid off for you immediately right after in terms of doing some work. So how did that all come about?
yeah, well, I was talking about like online resources and the benefits of that. And I remember the LSO had a red tag sale with CPDs. They had free replays. And I would always watch whatever subject I was studying at that time. And they were really helpful. And the speakers that would speak at the series, I would think that that's someone I want to learn from more. I remember there was one about summary conviction, and it was Marian Lippa, who's a LSO bencher, and Ruth Scotia, who is a criminal lawyer that I ended up working for. They were speakers at the series, and this is when Justice in Pieces first began, the first few months. So I thought, well, if they're willing to speak at LSO, I might as well, take the shot and invite them to be guest speakers. So I did, and they joined, and it was a great confidence boost when they accepted my invite, because at first I thought, like, they're probably not even going to open my email. I mean, they definitely have a lot of emails to respond, and they don't know me, but just taking that risk and having that interest in learning and sharing that to others, I feel like people like to hear that. So, and people are open to helping you and teaching you. And so they accepted my invite. And after that, I remember with Roots, I thanked her for joining. And in my mind, I wanted to keep that connection because I already set that good impression of wanting to learn from her and having her join, having her give an hour of her time and speaking to us. So I thought that's definitely a connection I want to keep. And I told her that if she ever needs anyone to volunteer at her office, keeping in mind we all have to do an internship at the end of the program, I'd be more than willing to join her office. And at that time, she told me that she had a full office, but she'll keep me in mind. It was a bit discouraging, to be honest, but I felt good that at least I did it. It was what I wanted to do, and I did establish that connection. I had her on LinkedIn, so that means a lot. And it wasn't until a month after that she emailed me back and said she actually did need a few more hands in her office, and she asked me for an interview. And I think it was in October, and my internship was in January, I believe. So from October to January, or actually like after that as well, I was working for her. I actually didn't do my internship with her. I ended up doing it at Jimmy's firm. He's a teacher at Trials. But it paid off that I've broke those insecurities I had of like, oh, she's not going to open my email, and actually reached out to her. Even though if she didn't respond right away that she needs help, you never know what happens down the road. So as long as you set that connection and push yourself to do it, like I also invited Marian Lipa, and Roots is telling me that they have like a referral base because Marian Lipa does a lot of HDA, Highway Traffic Act, and Roots does, she's a lawyer, so anything above 5,000, anything that's not like summary convictions, and just getting your name out there is what's important, because obviously it's quite a small community of lawyers. Well, it's actually quite big, actually. But you never know like who talks with each other. So even if that person isn't willing to take you on, they will get a good word in your name. So that's what's important.
Now, is it
And
that?
also thinking about your internships.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of internet, I was just talking to students from one of the campuses, and they're about halfway through the or almost to the end. So they're thinking about internships. And so I was just going to ask you, is it as simple as just sending a message on LinkedIn or an email? And again, you were mentioning before that you had this sort of fear or apprehension of approaching people. How did you kind of overcome that and connect? I mean, connecting with people and sending messages and asking about potential internships? Is it just as simple as you said, just do it and see what the results yield?
Well, I'm an overthinker, so it wasn't like I was like, hey, what's up? I actually took like a good day of like thinking and drafting an email that is really only maybe like one paragraph. 2 paragraphs is quite long. But I would read over it, put a lot of thought into it, and think what that person would feel when they're reading it. Obviously, I didn't want to be left on red, so I actually put a lot of effort into thinking of the right words to say, and that worked to my benefit. And that's actually a skill that you'll need as a paralegal or a lawyer. Communication goes back to legal writing. It's not the same, but the way that you communicate with your clients or with people that you want to intern with, or connections you want to make, of course you want to have the best impressions. So take your time when you're doing it, but do it. I'd always tell myself when someone responds to try to be faster than taking a whole day to respond, because you want to show that eagerness to communicate with them. And that also worked to my benefit. So do it. The first message, of course, you could take 24 hours because they're not anticipating you messaging them. But after that, I try to be quick, but also give thought into what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's funny. I still, when I try to approach some people, sometimes I still have that, oh, should I email them, or when should I ask, or how far in advance, and things like that. So you got to walk that balance about overthinking and thinking just enough, right? Not overthinking and not
Right.
underthinking as well there. Now, sir, we can come back, and I'm sure the students might have some more questions about the program, but after the program and after you complete the internships that we were just talking about, you then go and prepare for the licensing exam. What's different about the licensing exam versus the other open book multiple choice exams you had done at Trias? How did you prepare? What did you find worked for you? And what is it like on test day online as well, right? I think one of the first groups that were doing their exams, licensing exams online. So what was that like, and what did you learn from that experience?
I'm trying to recall what the Trios exam questions were like, and it's a bit hard, but of course the paralegal exam is much harder. No, I really can't remember what it was like, but in terms of the P1 exam, it's 1,000 pages, 5 subjects, and within those 5 subjects, like for criminal, there's a subject, admin law, there's a subject, jurisdiction and fundamentals, and
Ethics, I think,
legal
right?
ethics. Yes, it was very much ethics based. So all the bylaws, regulations, and that's just one course at Trios, but that is the whole, everything on the P1 is based on that, because of course that is the most important part, making sure that you're competent and you have your ethics down and you follow those rules and bylaws. But I also remember like tort was just a chapter, which very short for the P1, whereas it was much more longer at Trios. So for the paralegal, in contrast, for the P1, it was much more dense in information, but also succinct at the same time because it's 1,000 pages. But learning how to, within those 1,000 pages, like learning how to digest it and also memorize it. It was much harder because you get more time at Trios to actually study the topics. I would actually look back to my study notes for my exams and midterms at Trios when I was preparing my notes, study notes for the paralegal exam, because of course it's still multiple choice. So although I can't remember what the questions at Trios were like, I remember that it still helped in terms of the format. It's multiple choice again. It is open book as well. So I was saying earlier, like I kept my studying strategies throughout the whole course and also to my paralegal exam. And I stuck with that. And that helped, knowing that when I'm taking the P1, I'm walking into like the same thing, the same kind of testing format. So that's why it's really important from now to know what your learning strategy is and how you're able to learn in that kind of format. It's definitely much easier than it is open book, but of course that doesn't mean you have all day to flip through the pages and find the answer. It's very fast paced. The exam is only 2 hours and I believe it was 140 questions. So when you do the math and calculate how much minutes you have per question, it's not a lot. So knowing your strat, 160, Kevin said, thank you, which makes it even more harder and intimidating. But knowing your practice and getting used to it from when you're in Trios would help you in the long run.
And in terms of just, I guess, you had mentioned, as you probably remember from all the speakers, one of the things we talked quite a bit here is about taking care of your mental health. And one of the first things you mentioned was, going through undergrad and battling with that. What did you find in terms of, especially studying online, preparing for a licensing exam online, not having the opportunity for as much social interaction with your friends and family members that were not, in your household, right? I mean, with all of those restrictions over the last year and a half, what did you find worked for you in terms of being able to take care of that, both while being a student and then, of course, in preparing for the licensing exam, where, again, there's a lot certainly riding on it. Not as much as people, it's not the end of the world, right? Because you can obviously write a couple months later, and there's many people who go through that and they reset and are able to pass. But how did you kind of manage and cope with everything?
It's going to sound like JP pays me for this, but the guest speaker series, I was able to meet a lot of people that were paralegals, and I reached out to them, asked what their advice was and how they passed, if they have any tips to share. And it also made me realize that there's a lot of tutoring sessions available. So JP hosts one, Elaine Page, she was a guest speaker, she hosts one. Mohammed Usman, he was a guest speaker, he hosted one. And these were all resources available to me through the guest speaker, because I joined before I knew that they had their paralegal prep sessions, and after, and still even now. Maybe Elaine Page doesn't remember me, but I know Muhammad does. But that helped me in terms of with the studying and also with like mental health, because I feel like if I was studying alone, it wouldn't have gone so well. I wouldn't have stayed on task and like focused. So making those connections and seeing the different ways you could use that to your benefit all helps you in every different way. Even when I graduated for trials, I was still joining the guest speaker series, and it was nice to have that interaction, meeting new people, because you've had quite a lot of guests. And I really didn't go out with my friends so much during that time, but I felt like I've spent more time on Zoom with legal professionals. So that was, it's a good feeling, because you know you're only doing this for your own future, and you're kind of setting, it's like networking and branding yourself. You're setting yourself up for once you are licensed and once you do step into the legal profession, you already have all these connections. Now, maybe not everyone knows you by name, but at least you know them, and you know when it comes to it and you need a mentor, or you need an internship, or you need a paralegal tutor, you know who offers what, or at least who to ask for what.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's been so many people. It was, I think, close. I haven't counted recently, but I think it's probably close to 400 at this point. And I mean, until very recently, we were still going to them. So, I mean, probably 300 or so, I would think, is probably a
Yeah.
good estimate of how many different people you got a chance to talk to. But um, what did you find? I mean, in attending so many, I mean, did you notice some common themes of strategies or tips in terms of just getting into the profession? I mean, is there or is there any something in particular, like piece of advice that stood out? As you may remember, we always usually end with what are your final words of wisdom? Anything that really resonated with you, that you hold to yourself now that you moved on to law school there?
I think it was making notes and charts. Now, I actually don't remember if someone said this as a guest speaker, but a few people have mentioned it when I would ask them what helped them pass. And that was what I did as well for my exam. I think for almost every subject, like for example, for the Highway Traffic Act, what are the demerit points and fines? For the Charter of Rights, what sections and what does a section actually say? That was a way for me to digest the information and creating it in like a table or a mind map for myself. Um, of course, all that information is in the P1 package, but re-putting it in your own words helped me remember it better. Um, Another thing that really helped is hearing the different ways people would divide up the 900 pages. I actually didn't follow the most common advice, which was to split it subject by subject. So 5 subjects, have them all binded up separately. I actually took my own way of separating it. And hearing everybody else's advice, I thought, okay, if I imagine myself doing that, I have ADHD, so having like 5 different books in front of me is quite overwhelming. But I split it up by having the rules, bylaws, and regulations and ethics in one binder and everything else in another binder. And I actually created like easels. My dad did. He created wooden easels, and it was kind of like I was in a cubicle and surrounded with information. I even asked the LSO if I could have stuff like posted up on my wall, like taped up on my wall, like I do behind me. And they said you could, but only to a certain limit. So maybe like 2 or 3 pieces of paper. And of course, you have to show the proctor at the beginning. But that's another thing I did, and that helped me with being surrounded with my information. It helped me find it within that. I think it's like a minute and 10 seconds or something per question, knowing where things are. And when you create your own notes, you know where it is. You know what your own charts look like. I also color coordinated, so each section had its own color, and I would also highlight in that format too. So organizing it in your own way. A minute and 30 seconds. Thank you, Kevin. With organization, I feel like it's hard to take on someone else's advice, because in the end, during that exam, you're not sitting with anyone else. You're doing it alone. So doing what works for you.
Now, I mean, the last thing here I wanted to talk about, obviously, students that come in. I think maybe you had mentioned it right when you were starting, that that there's a few others that wanted to go to law school afterwards, and here you are, I think, in your dorm room. It looks like it, but
Yeah.
what kind of made that crystallize for you? Did it at any time did it waver that once you finished the program, you were going to get licensed and maybe start working? And was there a reason maybe you went right into it? What kind of was the thought process there, and what's it been like over there in Brighton for the first few weeks of law school?
Actually, before trials, I was thinking of this. I just didn't have the courage to dive into it right away. But the paralegal program, and I knew once I finished the program, I have to get licensed to, make that goal, achieve that. I knew I'd come here, but I wanted to, it was kind of like a test for myself. And also it was like a taster into the law, into the profession. And my passion only grew deeper through that, because it's not just like I took the program, got licensed, and then I came here. I try to be involved in any opportunity that was available. There was a Dominion mock trial as well. And now I didn't participate, but I volunteered in it. But being engaged in the profession made me think like, wow, this is something I really like. I want to take this to a different extent. And so, I mean, I always knew I would do that, but I knew that I could do it, and I knew that I would be successful. And even as a paralegal and before getting licensed, if I was able to make all those connections, getting a job before I even got my internship, doing well at that, and graduating with a distinction, finishing my paralegal, like finishing the P1 and passing, because I knew that would be kind of my only shot. September, I knew I was going to leave and go to the UK, but putting my all into it is what helped me motivate me to move across the sea, across the pond, and come over here. It is a bit tough at first. I'm going into my third week now, so homesickness is starting to kick in, but just knowing that it's like 9 months, summertime, I'll be back. And when I do come back, I'm a licensed paralegal, and that's when I could actually start working. It's like a good thing to put my mind to and like fall back on. And I also wanted to make sure I get licensed in the event that, as a backup plan. I don't want to sound negative, but I feel like you always have to have a backup plan in life, because you never know where life takes you. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Brighton's great. So at least there's, the beauty of the city, and exploring and traveling. It's a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of certainly going over there, and it's funny because you were talking about before there the earlier courses, and we learn about contingency planning, I think, at one of the very beginning classes there. So certainly important, just in case that you have your options there. Is there what's different than in terms of, I mean, you probably have learned about Donahue versus Stevenson again. But are you finding anything? I know it's still very early, drastically different in terms of studying and reading and preparing than at trials.
Um, it's like trials work, but like times a billion. It is quite overwhelming. I'm still getting adjusted to it, but in terms of like the reading, there's like a billion cases. I have like a to-do list of cases I need to read, and instead of it getting shorter of me achieving and reading cases, it just gets longer and longer. So I'm still getting adjusted on how to do all this reading and attend lectures at the same time. But I know in order to do that, I need to set up a schedule. Now, my classes are not easy. They don't allow me to do that because I have one, for example, at 10 a.m. and I have another one in the afternoon, and then my last one at like 8 p.m. So pretty scattered around the day, but I know I need to have a schedule to fit in not only reading, but like doing assignments, writing case briefs, all that fun stuff. And once I have a solid schedule, or at least maybe not the same thing every week, but every day, the amount of hours I attribute to my reading, the amount of hours I attribute to writing my notes from lectures and so on, that's when I'll have a better handle on things. That's still in the works.
Yeah, it's still early. I think maybe a year from now, I'll write back to you and ask how it went and
Yes.
what more differences and similarities you found. Now, in terms of, I mean, obviously, you mentioned Brighton. It's, you're not in Toronto anymore. So with the pandemic and again with so much remote learning and remote guest speakers and everything remote, what are you finding in terms of being back in person? Is it like a different experience altogether than like you forgot about going to the classroom and sitting in desks? And how have you adjusted to that?
Not many people wear masks here. It is required in class to wear a mask unless you have a medical exemption, but I'm in like a class of 400 and 300 are not wearing a mask. And it's kind of hard to believe that 300 people have a medical exemption. So I'm still like in my mask. I don't want to get sick here. Trying to stick to those protocols, but in terms of being back in person and in class, it's a hard adjustment. Here, since it's like an undergrad degree, it's a bachelor program. There's a lot of people that are straight out of high school, like 18-year-olds that want to party every day of the week, which is surprising. Like when I used to party, it's Fridays only because you have the weekend off. But there's always a party going on here, and it's makes me think like, okay, I came here to study, so let me focus on that. Just getting used to being patient and meeting the right friends, because I don't want to, meet. No, I don't want to be a partier. I don't want to hang out with the partiers, but the more shy and introverted people that spend their time in their dorm room studying, like me, will slowly become friends. So that's what I'm starting like now, third week in. I heard I missed Freshers Week, but I heard there's something called the Freshers Flu because everyone goes around and parties and they're sharing their germs. So kind of distancing myself from those people, which is like the majority of people here.
Well, I mean, hopefully you find something there, like whether it's like the fish and chips or something. I think Brighton's has
There's
some
a
pretty good ones.
Canadian Law Society. So yeah, I'm joining that and staying true to my Canadian roots.
So again, as you know, towards the end here, what now it's interesting, obviously, and I love when students come back in particular because it's kind of like now you're the shoes on the other foot. You've been on the other side so many times. You were looking for tips to write the exam, and now you're the one providing them. So now going full circle and doing the full 360 here. looking back on your last couple of years, going into, from your decision to pick the paralegal program or getting into a personal injury firm there to begin with, and now you're in law school, and certainly a couple more years away from potentially becoming licensed. And then there's a whole process of that as well, coming if you're coming back here.
Yeah.
But now you get to dish out the advice in terms of, instead of receiving it, any final words of wisdom for any of the students that are listening, especially the students who are just starting 2 weeks in the program. Maybe they're a little discouraged. Maybe they have their first midterm coming up, and it may not go as they think it would go. I mean, hopefully it goes well for everyone. But what do you have to say from your experience now over the last couple of years?
I want to make it good because this was my favorite part of the series. Well, when things get tough, just remember the things you want and how you get the things you want isn't the same. It's not easy to get the things you want, but as long as you know that that is your plan, that's your end goal, and you're going to achieve that, then you could push through the hard times, the times when you have 2 assignments due at once, the times when you have 2 exams in the same week. You'll push through it and you'll get through it. Just remember your end goal and keep pushing.
Perfect. And spoiler alert for all the students, that happens every month. They're actually every 2 weeks, because there's 2 weeks of midterms, and 2 weeks later are 2 weeks of the exam. So you'll kind of get thrown into the fire there, and then you'll figure out what works for you, and hopefully like in Roxanna's case, that you finish and graduate with distinction and go on to becoming licensed. And maybe you might go to England, or you might go to law school, or if you want, down the road. But certainly at that point, you're licensed as a paralegal, and you can start using that license in whatever way you'd like to do so. So, Roxanna, thank you so much for joining. It's always nice to
Thank
hear,
you.
and congratulations on all the success you've had in completing the program and getting licensed. And now I'm sure you're well on your way to replicating that in law school there. So enjoy.
Thanks so much.
Don't spend too many hours. I mean, I'm sure if I talked to my 25-year-old self, probably told me the opposite, to stay in more, but go out every once in a while, so you have that balance there. But good luck, and thanks again for joining, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Take care.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.